It was just past 8:30 p.m. when Janelle Rhodes stepped through the revolving glass doors of the Rhodes Grand Des Moines. Outside, Iowa's late spring air still clung to the sidewalks in waves of warmth, and the scent of fresh-cut grass drifted faintly behind her. She wasn't there to make a scene. She didn't need anyone to know who she was. All she wanted was a room, a hot shower, and a few hours of rest before a quarterly board meeting she hadn't planned to attend in person. But from the moment her foot touched the marble tile, the night veered off course. She didn't look like a power player, not by the standards most people carry in their heads. There was no tailored suit, no designer heels, just soft tan loafers, charcoal ankle pants, and a light trench coat over a crisp linen shirt. Her hair was swept up into a simple bun, no makeup, no jewelry. Her bag, a well-worn leather duffel with initials nearly faded off the tag, hung from one shoulder. She was alone. No assistant, no driver, no presence that screamed, "Someone important has arrived." She moved through the lobby like she'd been there before, which, in fact, she had. She'd overseen the architectural remodel herself 5 years earlier. She knew every inch of this building, the curve of the reception desk, the scent of the eucalyptus candles in the lobby, the faint click of the espresso machine across from the elevators. The receptionist didn't look up right away. A young woman, early 20s, typing with one hand and scrolling her phone with the other, looked more preoccupied than present. Her name tag read Eliza, and her acrylic nails tapped against the keys in a rhythm too fast to be productive. Janelle waited politely. She was never one to interrupt, not even now. "Checking in?" Eliza finally asked, smiling with the kind of distant politeness used for guests she assumed wouldn't stay long. "Yes," Janelle said, her tone warm but neutral. "Under the name Rhodes, Janelle Rhodes." There was a pause, short but telling. Eliza blinked, fingers slowing across the keyboard. Her brows drew slightly inward. She said after a few seconds. "I'm not seeing any reservation under that name." "That's all right," Janelle replied easily. "There should be a suite blocked off. I don't usually book through the system. Ownership override." Eliza tilted her head, her eyes flicking toward a supervisor who wasn't there. "We're actually at full capacity tonight. We've had a couple of conferences book out last minute. We're only accepting guests with confirmed reservations." The shift in her tone was almost imperceptible, professional, but with an edge of finality. A subtle signal. "You don't belong here tonight." Janelle didn't flinch. She didn't narrow her eyes or raise her voice, but the room tilted ever so slightly, the energy shifting. Behind Eliza, on the back wall, a gleaming gold plaque read, "Rhodes Grand," a Rhodes Lux Holdings property. Her name wasn't just on the reservation, it was on the building. "I am a guest," Janelle said quietly, her voice steady. "And more than that, I own this hotel." Eliza blinked again. This time, the pause was heavier. She looked as though Janelle had just told her she was the governor of Iowa. A beat later, Eliza's lips pulled into a soft, skeptical smile. "You own the Rhodes Grand?" Janelle nodded, calm, unbothered. "I do. I'm going to have to call my manager." "Please," Janelle said simply. The words were polite, but the air between them turned electric. Across the room, a man in business casual paused mid-sip at the fireplace. A couple near the concierge's table glanced up from their iPads. The silence grew legs and walked across the lobby. People were starting to pay attention. A minute later, a man appeared from the side hallway, clipboard in hand, tie slightly askew. Derek Lawson, assistant general manager. His expression was all surface charm, the kind that forms too quickly and disappears just as fast. "Good evening," Derek said. "Is there an issue with your reservation?" "She says she owns the hotel," Eliza said, with a note of confusion that bordered on disbelief. "I don't say it," Janelle replied, not unkindly. "I do. Janelle Rhodes. Check your investor reports or the board memos." Derek hesitated. Then he nodded, unsure. Right, just give me one moment. We'll look into this. He turned and walked briskly toward the staff offices, muttering something into a walkie-talkie clipped to his hip. Janelle didn't move. She stood a few steps from the check-in counter, posture composed, eyes steady. She didn't pull out ID, didn't show ownership paperwork, didn't list the 17 other hotels she oversaw across the country. Not yet. Then, she reached into her coat pocket and pulled out her phone. One call, just one. It lasted exactly 28 seconds. I've been denied access to my own property, she said, clearly but without anger. Please resolve this immediately. She hung up. Across the lobby, subtle things began to shift. A security guard appeared by the elevators. Another hovered near the coffee station. Not threatening, not physical, just present. Janelle felt it, that familiar heat at the back of the neck, the invisible question mark in the air. Is she telling the truth? She'd lived this before, too many times, in offices, hotels, airports, boardrooms, assumed to be the intern, the assistant, the plus one. Because to so many people, power still has a face. And it didn't look like hers. She could have walked away. She could have told them off. But Janelle Rhodes had learned. Real power doesn't beg. It doesn't shout. It waits. And waiting was something she'd mastered. The clock above the fireplace ticked past 8:50 p.m. The lobby at Rhodes Grand Des Moines remained still, but beneath the stillness was something thick, like the air before a summer storm. Janelle didn't speak. She didn't sigh. She simply stood near a marble pillar, phone in hand, watching the scene unfold as if she were both participant and observer. She could feel the eyes. The receptionist, Eliza, glanced at her, then quickly looked away. Her fingers hovered nervously above the keyboard now, typing nothing. The security guard near the elevators didn't move. Neither did the one by the coffee station. A woman at the bar paused mid-conversation, and behind the concierge stand, a bellhop mouthed something to another staff member and pointed, ever so slightly, in Janelle's direction. It was happening. The shift. The moment when assumption collides with reality, and people scramble to rearrange their understanding of the world. That's when the elevator dinged. Two figures stepped out. One wore a slate gray suit, pressed sharp enough to suggest corporate rank. The other, in a fleece jacket embroidered with the Rhodes Lux emblem, held a tablet in one hand and a distinct look of urgency in his eyes. Janelle knew them both. Sharon Kim, Regional Vice President of Operations. Maurice Langston, District Manager over the Central Midwest Properties. The phone call had done its job. Sharon spotted Janelle immediately and moved with swift purpose. Maurice followed close behind, already scanning his tablet. Their faces, usually composed and confident, flashed briefly with something rare, unease. Ms. Rhodes, Sharon said, stopping short of a full jog. We are so sorry for the confusion. I just got the call a few minutes ago. We're handling everything right now. Maurice nodded quickly, barely catching his breath. Your suite is being prepared. We're pulling the driver to be ready at your convenience. Your usual preferences, fruit tray, lemon water, espresso, are all being arranged. Janelle gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. Thank you. Derek, the assistant GM, appeared from the hallway just in time to see the chaos he'd missed. He opened his mouth to speak, but Sharon cut him a sharp glance that stopped him cold. There was a tension now, but it was no longer on Janelle. It had pivoted, turned inward, ricocheted through the staff like a pinball of panic. Eliza's posture changed visibly. Her once casual stance now held an edge of stiffness. Her lips parted, searching for something to say, but her eyes betrayed her. Wide, pale, dismayed. She had finally looked up Janelle's name, and what stared back at her wasn't a reservation, but ownership portfolios, interviews in Forbes, keynote speeches at hospitality summits, and a photo from the ribbon-cutting ceremony 5 years ago. The same woman she had just dismissed had cut the ribbon to the building she worked in. It would have been funny if it weren't so painfully familiar, because Janelle had seen this story play out too many times before. People don't just doubt her, they doubt the possibility of her. She was too soft-spoken, too unassuming, too black, too female, too unbranded for the glossy image people had of power, and yet she was the one holding the deeds. "This is Suite Alum O2," Maurice said, tapping his screen. "It's being deep cleaned now, just in case. Your keycards will be ready in 5. Has check-in been completed?" Janelle asked, her tone cool. "It's being handled." "I'd like it confirmed now." Sharon turned toward the front desk, and for the first time, Eliza didn't move. Her hands remained frozen above the keyboard. Janelle watched her closely, not with anger, but with a deeper curiosity. Would her tone shift now that she knew? Would her posture change? Because it was one thing to be disrespected when people don't know who you are. It's something entirely different when they do, and choose to act the same anyway. "Suite 1102, Maurice repeated, more to himself now, confirming again. "The driver is standing by if you need to go anywhere tonight or in the morning." Janelle nodded once. "I'll take the suite, and I'd like someone to confirm it's clean, personally." "Of course." Derek stepped forward again, trying to salvage the moment. "Ms. Rhodes, I believe there's been a misunderstanding." Janelle turned toward him, calm, measured. "You can misunderstand a phone number," she said. "You can misunderstand a room type, but a person? That's something else." Derek froze. Across the room, the barista at the espresso kiosk paused mid-pour. Guests lowered their voices, sensing something important was happening. Not loud, not dramatic, but significant. A lesson in real time. Maurice pulled Derek aside. His voice was low, but firm, urgent. Sharon was already typing something furiously into her phone, most likely an HR escalation, or maybe a system-wide incident log. Janelle said nothing. She didn't smile, she didn't gloat. She just turned, walked to the front desk, and placed her phone gently on the counter. "I'll take the 12th floor suite. Same setup as last time. Please make sure it's ready." Eliza opened her mouth, but no words came. Janelle didn't wait. She turned to Sharon. "Have I been checked in?" Sharon, now holding a clipboard from a bellhop, flipped a page. "Yes, ma'am. You'll have 2 keys and an incident report by the time you reach the elevator." Janelle gave a small nod. "And the rest?" Sharon replied without hesitation. "We've issued a site-wide notification. Corporate audit team is on standby. All active staff will go through recertification. Disciplinary actions begin tonight." For the first time since the moment she walked in, Janelle allowed herself a quiet breath. Not relief, not satisfaction, just acknowledgement. This wasn't about making anyone suffer. It was about making sure they remembered. She glanced at Eliza one more time, not as a threat but as a mirror. The young woman looked like someone who just realized she'd failed a test she didn't know she was taking. "You'll speak with her?" Janelle asked, her voice soft but clear. Sharon cleared her throat. "Yes, ma'am, privately, with HR present." Janelle raised a hand gently. "I'll speak with her too, but not now. After I've rested." The elevator door slid open behind her. Janelle picked up her duffel, took the key cards, and walked toward the lift without another word. Heads turned. Some guests whispered. Others simply watched. But no one dared speak to her directly, because now they knew. And power recognized, too late, is often the most uncomfortable truth of all. At precisely 6:30 a.m., the elevator doors on the 12th floor opened, and Janelle Rhodes stepped out. Not as a guest, but as a CEO reclaiming her space. She wore a deep charcoal suit, cleanly tailored, with an ivory silk blouse underneath. Her heels, modest but firm, tapped in sharp, deliberate rhythm against the tile. Not a single strand of hair was out of place. Her face held no fury, no fatigue, just an intense stillness, a quiet kind of power. Downstairs, the Rhodes Grand was beginning to stir. Guests wheeled bags toward the front entrance. A few grabbed coffee from the corner kiosk, where the barista now poured with extra precision. Conversations, normally casual, hushed the moment she entered the lobby. Every eye followed her path. Even the doorman, who hadn't acknowledged her the night before, straightened his stance and tipped his head. Not out of obligation, but out of something deeper, recognition. At the fireplace, Sharon Kim and Maurice Langston stood waiting. Each held a folder. Two untouched coffees sat on a side table beside them, gone cold in their nervous anticipation. "Good morning," Sharon greeted, her voice quiet but formal. Janelle gave a nod and continued past them toward a small, glass-walled conference room tucked behind the concierge desk. Maurice opened the door for her, then stepped back. Inside sat three people. Derek, the assistant general manager, stiff in his seat, clipboard clutched like a life preserver. Eliza, the receptionist, face pale, hands clasped in her lap. And a woman Janelle hadn't seen before, introduced simply as Marla, a senior HR representative flown in overnight. A notepad sat open in front of Marla. The pen in her hand didn't move. Janelle didn't take a seat. She stood at the head of the table, arms folded loosely across her chest, and let the silence stretch until it became something people could feel. Then she spoke. "Would someone like to explain what happened last night, from your perspective?" No one answered at first. Derek's throat bobbed. Eliza looked down at her lap like it might offer an escape hatch. Marla shifted in her seat, but said nothing. "I just," Eliza began, voice barely audible. "I didn't think, I didn't know." She trailed off. "You didn't expect someone like me to own this hotel," Janelle finished for her. Her tone wasn't accusatory, it was clarifying. Eliza nodded weakly. "No, ma'am." Janelle leaned slightly forward. "Was I rude to you? No. Did I raise my voice? No. Did I threaten you?" Eliza's voice was a whisper. "No." "Then help me understand what made you decide I didn't belong." That question hung in the air like smoke. Derek cleared his throat. "It was a misunderstanding." "No, Derek." Janelle cut in softly. "It wasn't. Misunderstandings don't call security. Misunderstandings don't ask someone to prove they are who they say they are after they've already told you." She turned slightly toward Marla. "I'm not here to turn this into a firing squad, but I am here for accountability." Marla nodded. "Understood." Maurice stepped forward, holding out a document. "We've prepared a formal write-up for Eliza. She'll be removed from the front desk rotation until she completes a new inclusivity and guest engagement certification. Derek will be placed under administrative review, effective immediately." Janelle nodded once. Then she turned back to Eliza. "How long have you worked here?" "4 months. And in those 4 months, how often have you thought about who built this hotel? Who shaped it?" Eliza hesitated. "I guess I just assumed it was some corporation or like a group of investors." "I get that," Janelle said. "That's the image most people carry. But it wasn't a nameless board that built this place. It was me." She let that settle. "From the tile to the scent in the hallways to the training modules you went through, I was part of every decision because this hotel isn't just a business. It's a story, my story." And then she told it. Not with flair, not to inspire pity, just to make them see. How she started out working overnight front desk shifts at age 23. How she once lived out of her car for 6 months while studying accounting. How she got laughed out of 3 investor meetings in a single week for having a business plan and no pedigree. How she bought her first motel at 29 using a loan co-signed by her former college roommate. How she built her empire by offering excellence, not flash. There's a reason we don't wear name badges that say CEO, she said. Because this brand was built to make every guest feel seen, regardless of status. Marla scribbled notes furiously. Maurice stood still, hands behind his back. Derek looked away, red-faced. Then Janelle continued, "We're not just in the hospitality business. We're in the recognition business. That means more than remembering a guest name. It means understanding that people carry stories with them when they walk through our doors. You don't need to know those stories, but you do need to respect that they exist." She turned toward Maurice and Sharon now. "I want mandatory staff-wide empathy training across all Rhodes Lux properties. Not box checking, real content, real guest stories, and I want a new module created." Maurice raised an eyebrow. "What kind of module?" She met his gaze. "Walk in my shoes." A pause. "It's a shadowing program. 1 day a month, every employee, from executive level down, spends 4 hours as someone else. A doorman, a housekeeping lead, a guest with accessibility needs, a manager dealing with system outages. No exceptions. Not even me." Marla looked stunned. "That's incredibly bold." "It's necessary," Janelle replied. "You don't change culture by making announcements. You change it by creating perspective." Sharon spoke for the first time. "We'll begin development today." Janelle finally sat. She exhaled, not in exhaustion, but in clarity. Her voice was quieter now, but more personal. "When I was 27, she said, "I walked into a luxury hotel in Chicago to pitch a renovation plan. I wore my best blazer, which I got secondhand, and waited in the lobby for my meeting. The manager walked past me 3 times thinking I was a guest's assistant." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "That meeting changed my life, but I never forgot how that lobby made me feel." Then she looked directly at Eliza. "You don't have to remember everything I said today, but remember this. The next time someone walks through those doors, check your assumptions at the threshold. Because dignity shouldn't be something guests have to earn. It should be something you offer by default." Eliza nodded, tears rising quietly. "I'm sorry," she said. "I really am." Janelle gave a small nod. "Then learn and do better. That's how we move forward." The meeting adjourned in silence. No dramatic exits, no final zingers, just the weight of real leadership redefining a room. And Janelle? She didn't linger. She stood, adjusted her blazer, and walked out, knowing this reckoning wouldn't be remembered because of how loud it was, but because of how transformative it felt. The rhythm of the Rhodes Grand returned slowly, like a song restarting after a skipped beat. Guests moved through the lobby again, coffee in hand, baggage rolling over marble floors. The morning sun slipped through the tall windows, casting warm light over the concierge desk. It all looked normal, but inside, the atmosphere had changed. Underneath the clean counters and polite greetings, something was different now. Quieter, more aware. Staff moved with a new kind of attentiveness, not fear, not performative hospitality, something else, something earned. And still, Janelle Rhodes wasn't finished. Not with a policy, not with a memo, not even with an apology. There was one more conversation she knew she needed to have, not for accountability, not for appearance, but for understanding. She waited until the rush of checkouts and coffee orders had thinned. No audience, no distractions, just the stillness that follows tension when everyone's trying to figure out how to breathe again. Through a back corridor behind the staff lounge, she found her, Eliza, the young receptionist. She was sitting alone at a narrow table, the remnants of a blueberry muffin untouched beside her. Her phone lay face down, and her posture said everything. Heavy shoulders, quiet guilt. Janelle didn't send anyone ahead to announce her. She simply walked in. Eliza looked up fast, startled, nearly knocking over her paper cup. "Relax," Janelle said gently, pulling out the chair across from her. I just want to talk. Eliza sat straighter, nodding quickly. Yes, ma'am. Drop the ma'am, Janelle said, her voice warm. This isn't a hearing. A long pause settled between them, filled only by the hum of the fridge and the soft buzz of fluorescent lights. Then Janelle asked softly, have you ever worked in a place where you felt small? Eliza blinked, looked at her, then nodded. Yeah, most of the time. Tell me, Janelle said. There was no judgment in her tone, just curiosity, the kind that invites people to step into themselves without shame. Eliza hesitated, then exhaled. I used to work at a diner just off I-80, wore a paper hat, got screamed at by cooks during lunch rush. Most customers ignored me. Some would call me kid even though I was 27. I think I said thank you 1,000 times for tips that never came. She paused. I felt invisible. All the time. Janelle nodded slowly, leaning back. Then, help me understand how, after all that, you looked me in the eye last night and decided I didn't belong. It wasn't an accusation. It was a mirror. Eliza stared at the table. I don't know. I didn't mean to. Her voice cracked slightly. When you walked in, I thought maybe you were lost or maybe waiting on someone else. You didn't look like. She stopped herself. Didn't look like what? Janelle pressed gently. Eliza didn't answer right away. Janelle waited. And then, Eliza whispered, the kind of person who owns hotels. There it was. Not cruelty, not malice, just the picture in her head. The one shaped by ads, movies, job training slides, and a lifetime of internalized patterns. And it had told her, subconsciously, instinctively, that ownership looked different, that power wore a different face. Janelle didn't flinch. She'd heard this before, felt it in boardrooms, interviews, property tours, even at award galas. She leaned forward. You know the real problem? She asked. That picture doesn't just live in your head, it lives in your decisions. Eliza's eyes filled with tears. I'm sorry, she said. I know that's not enough, but I really am. Janelle nodded. It's a start, but I didn't come here for an apology. Eliza looked confused. I came here because I wanted you to see me, Janelle continued. Not as a boss, not as a headline, as a person. Eliza blinked. I don't get it. You wanted me to see you? Janelle smiled gently. I was you once. And then she told the part she rarely told. How her first job in hospitality wasn't glamorous. It was third shift laundry. How she got mistaken for the janitor on her first day in night audit. How a guest once handed her trash because they assumed she worked maintenance. How her first promotion came not because someone saw her potential, but because someone else quit unexpectedly. I had to fight to be seen, Janelle said, every day. And when I finally made it to the boardroom, I told myself, I'm going to build places where women like me, like you, can rise without begging for recognition. Eliza's eyes were wide now. You really started from there? In St. Paul, Janelle nodded. My first supervisor told me I sounded too educated for phones and moved me to night audit. That was my beginning. Eliza almost laughed. That's unreal. It shouldn't be, Janelle said. It should be normal. They sat in silence for a moment. Then Janelle stood. I don't need you to be perfect, she said, but I need you to be aware. Every person who walks through those doors, young, old, dressed up or not, deserves dignity. Start there, and you'll never have to recover from moments like last night again. Eliza stood too. Thank you for talking to me, she said quietly. I mean that. Janelle nodded once and turned to leave. But as she walked out of the lounge, something in her felt lighter, not because the problem was solved, not because she'd delivered a speech, but because the message had finally landed, right where it needed to. And maybe, just maybe, that would change the picture in someone's head. By mid-morning, The heartbeat of the Rhodes Grand had settled into its usual rhythm. Bellhops carted luggage across polished floors. The espresso machine hissed from the cafe corner. A young couple asked for directions to a botanical garden. The world outside had resumed, just like it always does. But inside, especially in the management office, something was different. The walls didn't look changed. The desks hadn't moved. But the people inside them? They were seeing differently now. Maurice Langston, now out of his fleece jacket and in a crisp button-down, stood by the office window, watching the valet rotate cars under the awning. His fingers were pressed to his lips in thought. Sharon Kim typed briskly at her laptop, drafting a company-wide bulletin that would ripple across every Rhodes Lux property by end of day. Marla, the HR lead, quietly reviewed new onboarding modules, her brows pinched with focus. The tone of her edits wasn't just procedural, it was personal now. At the center of it all sat Janelle Rhodes. Her expression was unreadable, not cold, not distant, just precise, focused. A folder of employee evaluations lay open before her, each marked with color-coded flags, names, incidents, gaps, possibilities. She flipped a page and tapped her pen against the table. "I'm not here to punish," she said aloud. "I'm here to prevent repetition." Maurice looked up. "We're adjusting the interview process for front desk roles, not just experience and systems proficiency. We're adding empathy screening, bias pattern testing, perspective-based case studies." "Good," Janelle said. "And put me on the rotation." Maurice paused. "Rotation?" She didn't look up. "Starting next quarter, I'll visit properties at random. No announcement, no name badge, no red carpet, just me, a guest, until I'm not." Sharon raised an eyebrow. "You want to be a secret guest?" "Not secret," Janelle replied calmly. "Just invisible. The way so many guests feel." A small smile crept into Maurice's expression. "That's going to make a lot of people nervous." "Good," Janelle said. "Let them sit in it." She stood, slipping the last file back into its folder. Her voice dropped slightly, just enough to be intimate. "The real version of this job doesn't come with warnings. It comes with people who carry the weight of 1,000 assumptions. And our job is to make them feel seen, even when they say nothing." She paused. "And train our teams to do the same." Sharon looked up. "We'll make it real." "I want the new training live by Friday," Janelle continued. "Include story modules, not fake scenarios, actual guest experiences, real voices, no bullet point scripts, no cliches. I want human words." They all nodded. She walked out without fanfare. She didn't need it. On her way through the lobby, she passed the front desk. A new agent had taken over, a young black man with a neat blazer and confident presence. He looked up as she walked by and smiled, not out of obligation, but understanding. He knew who she was, and more importantly, he knew why she mattered. She returned the nod, just enough. Everything looked calm. But beneath the surface, she could feel it. Small fractures forming in old habits, quiet awakenings, shifts not shouted from a podium, but whispered through changed behavior. That's how real change begins, not with PR statements, not with hashtags, with corrections, quiet, repeated, until they stick. Janelle headed upstairs to grab her things. Her flight wasn't until the afternoon, and the suite had been meticulously reset, like someone had tried to make up for everything in the details. The air smelled of lemon and eucalyptus again. Her bag was packed, laptop charged, everything in order. Except one thing. A folded note sat on the nightstand. Plain lined notepad paper. No envelope. Just 6 words in careful handwriting. "Miss Rhodes, thank you for your grace. I'll be better. Eliza." It wasn't polished. It wasn't corporate. But it meant more than any canned apology could. She folded the paper once and slipped it into her purse. Because she knew this wasn't about getting the last word. It was about being the first lesson someone never forgets. Downstairs, a car was already waiting. The same doorman who hadn't greeted her the night before now opened the vehicle door with care, his tone warm. "Safe travels, Miss Rhodes. We hope to see you again soon." Janelle smiled. "You will." As the car pulled away, she didn't look back. She didn't need to, because she hadn't just walked into a hotel last night. She'd walked into an old story that too many people know too well: being judged before being known, being doubted despite proof, being tolerated instead of welcomed. And she didn't respond with rage. She responded with redefinition. She left something behind. Not vengeance, not resentment. She left a mirror, one that forced everyone to see themselves more clearly. The city passed by outside the window. Brick storefronts, traffic lights, gas stations, bakeries with faded signage. Her phone buzzed. A message from Sharon. Training module officially in development. Named it "The Guest You Didn't See." Janelle smiled. The driver said nothing. No small talk. Just the soft hum of tires on asphalt. She stared out the window, thinking of her younger self again. 23, working double shifts in stiff uniforms, no recognition, just ambition. Believing, always, that one day she'd build something no one could take from her. And she had. But buildings weren't enough, because even with 17 properties and a team of executives behind her, people still saw less. So what do, she thought, when the world refuses to see you? You make sure you see yourself, clearly, without apology. And then, you walk in anyway. You stand. You speak. You don't shrink. You act like the door was always yours. Because it was. Inside the terminal, people moved around her like currents, coffee in hand, kids in tow, announcements echoing through overhead speakers. And Janelle walked through it all, not louder, not taller, but unshakable. Because the weight she had once carried, the ache of being misjudged, the quiet burden of explaining herself, was now replaced with something better: understanding, growth, change, for them and even for her. And for anyone watching, anyone who'd ever been dismissed, overlooked, or told in subtle ways that they didn't belong, Janelle had one final thing to say. You don't have to shout to be heard. You just have to know who you are and walk like it every single time. Let them be uncomfortable. Let them learn. Let them wonder how they missed it. And when they finally see you, make sure they never forget. Janelle Rhodes didn't walk into the Rhodes Grand Des Moines looking to prove anything. She simply wanted a quiet night's rest before a board meeting. She arrived alone, dressed in a simple outfit, with no entourage or outward signs of wealth or power. And yet, the moment she stepped through the doors of a hotel she owned, she was met not with recognition, but with resistance. The young receptionist, Eliza, didn't see a CEO. She saw someone who didn't fit the picture of leadership. Despite Janelle calmly explaining that there was a suite always reserved for her, she was told the hotel was at full capacity. When Janelle clarified that she was the owner, security subtly appeared, a manager was summoned, and disbelief thickened the air. But Janelle didn't shout. She didn't threaten. She made one phone call. Soon after, corporate leaders arrived, mortified by the mistake. Apologies came quickly, but Janelle wasn't interested in the performance. She wanted transformation. The next morning, she walked into the hotel not as a guest, but as a CEO ready to hold her team accountable, not through punishment, but through awareness and responsibility. In a private meeting, she faced Eliza and the assistant GM, not to humiliate them, but to understand them. She asked honest questions. She shared pieces of her own journey, from working night audit shifts, to sleeping in her car, to being mistaken for support staff, even as she climbed her way into ownership. Later, in a quiet staff lounge, Janelle sat across from Eliza again, not as a superior, but as a woman who had once been invisible herself. They spoke not about policy, but about humanity. That conversation became the true turning point, not just for Eliza, but for a culture that desperately needed to be reimagined. By the time Janelle left the hotel, she'd implemented changes across her company: empathy-based training, real guest story modules, executive anonymity visits, all built around a single idea. People deserve dignity before you know who they are. She didn't need headlines or revenge. She left with something far more powerful: a folded, handwritten note that simply read, "Thank you for your grace. I'll be better." If this story moved you, inspired you, or made you think, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Your support gives us the motivation to keep creating powerful, meaningful content that matters.